The 49-year-old Uzumaki who became Hokage. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 71, Nine-Tailed Force. Testimony and participation. Xing Yan sighed and shook his head. In the end, there is no change at all? Although he got a full 50-point testimony, Masahiko was not happy at all. I looked at the column that was being adjusted, and looked around at this battlefield. I did not find the body of Uchiha. So, everything is exactly the same as the original. Is the spot still preparing for his Eye of the Eyes plan? Masahiko sighed and sat down on the floor, and he began to feel exhausted. Originally only 20% of chakra was left, all the way to fly at the maximum speed. Chakra almost bottomed out, and there are some signs of disintegration. Hey, let's restore chakra first. After more than 1 hour, Xing Yan has recovered nearly half of chakra, opened his eyes and saw that the column is still adjusting interest rates, but his face looked a little better. It is still the first time I see the column is so weak. The loss of vitality is too much. Unfortunately, Chiyoda is still a little girl, otherwise I should be able to give him some vitality with his own reincarnation. I don't know the column. This situation is good or not? Xing Yan muttered to himself. After a while, the eyes opened between the columns and looked at Xing Yan. Two grandfathers, let's go back to the village. Masahiko nodded and looked back. What about the 9 tails? Take it back first, and think of a way to seal it. Seal? People are strong? Xing Yan murmured, right, I got a cockroach from the old monk. The two returned to Konoha, and the villagers who were in the team were welcoming at the gate, so everyone in the big battle was aware. When I saw the return between the columns, I suddenly picked it up. Great, Huang adults are fine. I know that adults in the column must be fine. The discussion is endless, and there is a smile between the columns. I am fine, let's go back. Dispelled the onlookers, and the family leaders greeted them. Big brother. I looked at the column during the day and looked at Xing Yan again. The spot is dead. Xing Yan explained to the column, the other things go back and say. During the day, the Uchiha springs in the team changed their faces, hesitated, and turned back to Uchiha. The shackles of the 9 tails were reinforced with rafts, and they were tied at the door of the wooden leaves, allowing it to enjoy the treatment of the other 8-tail beasts. Others followed the column to the Huang meeting room, and the column was exposed to seriousness. The first sentence made everyone look different. I am going to retreat from the role of Naruto. The second generation of Huang is selected again by everyone. Big brother. The face changed, you. Ah, haha. The column scratched his head and smiled again. Don't worry, I can live for 3 or 5 years, the expression is not so serious. Xing Yan sighed, sure enough, this is. Everyone in the room suddenly picked it up. For a while, the Nara patriarch spoke up. Huang adults, if you retire, the second generation of Huang can be taken over by the Dadu. Yes. Can. Everyone in the scene agreed, because today's my village, in addition to the old generation who has retired like Xing Yan, the qualifications and strength to succeed in Huang are only the Day and Uchiha. In this way, they will naturally choose the Day. Nod between the columns, this piece is put aside in advance, followed by a 9-tailed question. Before the 9 tails have been controlled by the plaque, now it is suppressed by the power of my raft. But I probably can't suppress it for too long, I still have to find a way to seal it, Grandpa. There is no way to ask Xing Yan about the column, but the conference room door is pushed away. Between the columns, I can seal the 9 tails into my body. It was the Mido who came in. It was still a girl, but Masahiko did not find the gentle smile on the face of the Mido. The Mido, you. The look between the columns changed, slightly moved, but shook his head again. This is too dangerous. No need to do this, Xing Yan smiled and shook his head. Between the columns, you forgot that I stole from the old monk. Hey, borrowed it? A glimpse between the columns, random surprise, is it the seal of the crane? Masahiko nodded. I will go back and take it. Xing Yan rushed home and took it, and the group came outside the village of Mai. The 9 tails were still firmly bound by the raft, and there was no sign of waking up. This is a lot easier. Xing Yan muttered to himself, his hands sealed, seal, King Kong blocked. Finish printing again, seal, lock tail printing. The 2 seals tied the 9 tails tightly, and Xing Yan nodded. Between the columns, undo the raft, so I can't seal it. Nodded between the columns, the raft was evacuated, and the 9 tails slowly woke up. Hey! First screamed, then saw his own situation, damn Uchiha wave. Finally, my eyes were directed at Masahiko, and I was slightly fascinated. You are the old guy. Xing Yan's face is black, it seems that Jiawei still remembers that Yan Yan killed it once, but Whoever calls me the old guy is good, but I don't want you to call this old fox who has lived for thousands of years. Come to the bowl. Xingyan pointed to the 9 tails, seal 8 seals. 9 tails are constantly struggling, but under the seal of Xingyan 8 level no resistance, and constantly inhaled. However, the seal was carried out in half, and Xingyan's face changed. The remaining half of the 9 tails ran into the side and hit him. He found that he was full. What a seal artifact. Sealing the crane is okay, can only seal half of the seal? Do I have to be a 9-tailed person? Xingyan murmured. Seal, for elephant seals. A female voice came, it was the seeing of the waters of the Yen, the remaining half of the body was sealed by her. Xingyan's face changed. Is the Mido still a 9-tailed person? Looked into the inside the seal of the 9 characteristic property chakra, while the water body is the Yin attribute chakra. Masahiko shook his head and took the donkey to the Mido, who was surrounded by the crowd. The Mido closed his eyes. After 5 minutes, he opened his eyes and said with a smile. Don't worry, I can easily suppress the half-length body. The column was relieved and turned to Masahiko. To grandfather, you. Masahiko's old face was red, and he said, this old monk's break is not good. The column between the columns has no choice but to shake his head. He is also very familiar with this unrecognizable second grandfather. Forget it, there should be no problem with the 9-tailed body seal in the Mido body. If you want to keep it for a while. Xingyan smiled. No problem. I will reinforce the seal of the Mido, seal 4 seals, and counters. The 4-image seal released in reverse and the 4-image seal of Mido are perfectly combined to form a gossip seal. At the same time, Masahiko flashed a line of Chinese characters in front of him, witness and greatly changed the story of the Huiying world branch line, the first generation of Jiawei people, and obtained the witness point 5.8. Episode 72, Konoha Police Force. The 9-tailed seal incident came to an end, and the election of the second generation of Huiying was put on the agenda. Yes, it was the election. In the end, the column did not agree to let the succession of the day directly. Instead, it decided to hold another election. Uchiha Izumi was also pleasantly surprised by the news and personally visited the families. In particular, the 3 families, Fei, Gcun, and Chiyoda, also traveled with Uchiha mirrors, hoping to pull votes for themselves through their classmates. After the Whirlpool family stationed, after the column decided to step down, he came to Xingyan here at 3 days, and did not discuss the business, just to learn how to play the scorpion. There is really no way for Xingyan to be a gambler. Between the columns, I heard that there is no. Recently Uchiha Spring is also fighting for fire, do you have any opinions? Xingyan smiled and spoke. The column between the columns frowned, to Grandpa, why did you definitely be 11? Masahiko's face is black. You are not afraid of fighting for the Uchiha Springs? Pick up the shackles between the columns and shake them. Why can't I shake 18? Masahiko shot the table and scared the column. Take the shackles and shake them hard. Guess what time is it? 11, no, 18. Hesitating between the columns. Masahiko opened the cockroach, and the 3 scorpions were joined together. The top one was a point. The eyes widened between the columns. To grandfather, is this okay? Masahiko smiled. Want to learn? I teach you. Answer my question first. Xingyan still wants to repeat his own question. I didn't expect the column to open directly. 2 grandfathers, rest assured, Uchiha Springs can't compete for the day. He uses Uchiha Mirror to draw the sundial, the group, and the wind. But the day is their teacher. Masahiko was as black as charcoal. The original column had just heard his words, but he did not answer. Looking at the opposite side of the column, I can't wait to get a new skill in the scorpion. Xingyan faintly said, you are not afraid of Uchiha Springs. Teach me, Grandpa shook his head between the columns. What is the backhand? While talking, a swirling man knocked on the door. The great elders, Yuji Wavelength, the old Uchiha Spring, also visited. Masahiko nodded and gestured to let him in, and turned to the column, the mouth of laughter and laughter. Look, the backhand is coming? You hide behind and see how he got the second grandfather. The column between the columns was noisy and nodded, holding the shackles into the back room. Uchiha Izumi was also ushered in, and when I saw Masahiko, I smiled and said, Ima yen. Xingyan waved his hand and interrupted his words. Don't call the uncle, no big, no grandfather, if you were still in the Uchiha spot, would you call me that? Uchiha Izumi also had a black face and a dark heart. If the adult is still there, I dare to call you the old guy. But after all, there are people who ask for it, and they can only hate the opening. Xingyan. Grandpa. Hey, sit down. Xingyan smiled and promised. Uchiha Izumi also twitched at the corner of his mouth and sat down. The chair that had just been sitting between the columns was still warm. He frowned and asked, Grandma Masahiko, is there still someone? Xingyan snorted. Oh, no, just your chair as my foot on it. Uchiha Izumi also. Finally, I couldn't resist the anger. He said, my intention is to understand in your heart. I hope that the Vortex family will support me to make a fire. Xingyan sighed and scratched his head. We have a relationship with 1,000 hands, how can we support you? Uchiha Izumi also shook his head. Your vortex is now second only to the hand of the 1,000 hands and Uchiha. The fire shadows take turns. If you will support me to do the fire, this time. Masahiko smiled and shook his head. We can't do it with you if we support you. Uchiha Izumi also showed a smug smile. There are already many families who are willing to support me. Plus you, I will win the game. Xingyan stunned and replied, then I think about it. Uchiha Izumi also smiled more proudly, and Xingyan said goodbye and left the whirlpool station. Oh, haha. Waiting until Uchiha Springs also left, the column came out from the back room, and Masahiko couldn't help but laugh. Between the columns, look at him, haha. There was a stunned look between the columns. Two grandfathers, are you so happy when you can't make a fire? Xingyan's mouth was stiff, with his fingers on the column, and the twitching smile fell to the back of the chair. There is a natural black smile between the columns. In the blink of an eye, half a month has passed, and voting for the election of Naruto begins. Uchiha Izumi also lost to the day with a high vote of 59 votes. If there are only 100 people who are eligible to vote, Uchiha Spring will certainly win, but there are 1,000 people who are eligible to vote. And precisely, there are 60 Uchiha people who are eligible to vote. I don't know which person did not vote for Uchiha. Looking at his completely green face, Xingyan smiled even happier. Uchiha Izumi also came over with hate, Xingyan. Grandpa, are we not saying good? Xingyan smiled, you are not saying that many families support you. You see, there is no one in Uchiha who has not voted for you. Speaking of this, Xingyan paused and thought of something, and said, and maybe your son does not support you. Mirror. Uchiha Izumi also snorted, his face changed slightly, and turned away. The selection of Naruto came to an end, and the second generation of Naruto was successfully completed. Xingyan also obtained 20 points of testimony. He was more responsible than the column, and stayed at the Huing building all day and refused to come out. Masahiko was so helpless that he was entangled in the column of his nephew all day, and later he used his practice of engraving techniques to shut him out. This is not an excuse, but Xingyan is really practicing. He spent another 9 testimony on the engraving and set it to full level. I have been familiar with my full-scale engraving techniques since then. Of course, he didn't want to sculpt the volcanic rock for the day, but he remembered that 2 huge statues were needed to end the valley. Such a great ninja between the plaque and the column needs to be remembered by future generations. When Masahiko was familiar with the engraving technique, Konoha was a small mess. Uchiha Izumi also failed to compete in Naruto. Unwilling Uchiha people are doing things everywhere. Whether it is the medical department, the restaurant, or even the ninja school, they all want to insert one hand. The families of the families have repeatedly told each other about the occasion, and they have set up a well-known organization, the My Police Force, and the main duties are all held by the Uchiha family. They are responsible for formulating statutes in the village, strengthening and maintaining the order and security of the village of Mai, and arresting people with criminal tendencies and ninjas. With such a large power, Uchiha's emotions have been comforted, and Konoha has once again returned to calm. But this is just a precursor to the storm. Episode 73, Dark Part. At the end of the 8 years of Mai, the world of ninjas, which has been peaceful for 8 years, is once again in turmoil. It has been a few months since the end of the Battle of the Valley. Even the villages with poor detection capabilities have received accurate news. The 2 pillars of Mai have been killed and injured, and the villages have tacitly expanded their armaments. Second grandfather, is peace really difficult to achieve? These days, between the pillars, I heard the wind from the daytime, and I was always depressed and unhappy. Masahiko smiled and shook his head. Peace will come, you will see that day. Silence between the columns for a while, whispered, plaque. Masahiko saw it and frowned. During this time, there will be nothing wrong with the column. If it is the former Shiseki Hiko, I will be happy to discuss the column CP with my friends, but after touching them both. Is there something happening in the valley that I don't know? Xingyan muttered. The spot should be noticed that I was manipulated. And the column would not be noticed, it would be noticeable, but he always did not ask. Masahiko's micro-feeling was not right, but he didn't know where the problem was. He didn't expect the black to appear in front of the spot in advance. During the period of thinking, there are people outside the door knocking on the door. The big elders, the second generation of Huaying adults, have something to look for. Masahiko sighed and looked at the column. You don't care about the situation. Since you have been on fire, you have grown up in the Huaying building. Even the two grandfathers who are looking for me are sent to inform you. The column also returned to God, shaking his head with a smile. I am a big brother who is becoming less and less majestic. Xingyan glanced at him. Who is in your majesty? Shaking his head and going out. I came to the Huaying building and was introduced to the conference room by the resident ninja. After entering, Xingyan frowned, and he found that not only was he and the other, but the other 4 elders were also there. What happened? Without waiting for the day, Uchiha Springs rushed to talk. Xingyan. Grandpa, you are coming right, and you are persuading the second generation. It is enough for me to have the guard of our Uchiha family. What is the second generation? Assassination of tactical special forces, what is the use? Said, but also has been eyeing Xingyan. Next to the big sister, she widened her eyes and looked at Xingyan. I don't know when he was so good with the Uchiha family. Masahiko was also awkward, and I didn't expect Uchiha to have such a familiar person. First of all, the trick is not familiar. Secondly, you have to call the second generation of Naruto, not the second generation. Masahiko first said, the second generation is what I can call, is it, my second generation adults? I smiled awkwardly. 2 grandfathers, I am really busy recently. The calm world will not last long. Xingyan nodded, forgive the day, so, you want to set up this assassination, what special forces come? It is a special force to assassinate tactics, added. So trouble, the short part of the dark is got. Hey? Dark? Xingyan said, a look of arrogance. Seeing 5 people with a stunned face, Xingyan said, it's good to be established. Oh, yes, it's still not established. What are you looking for? Looking at the 4 elders, shaking their heads, for elders have different opinions. Masahiko looked at the Nara patriarch and the Japanese patriarch. Who are you who have joined Uchiha? The scene slammed down for a while. I couldn't help but sigh. 2 grandfathers, let's go out and say. Outside the meeting room, Kasama and Masahiko explained the situation in detail. The Uchiha family did not agree to the establishment of the dark part because the dark part was completely independent of the fire shadow and was not under the jurisdiction of the Konoha garrison. He would naturally not agree. The other disagreement is the Japanese family. The wide-eyed eyes of the Japanese people are really a weapon of investigation. Therefore, the information of the wood leaves is basically under their control. If the dark parts are established, they will lose a lot of power. After I heard it, I frowned and looked at the day. This is not like your character. In the meantime, if you want to set up a dark part, who can stop you? I sighed. Now, no more than before, it is estimated that after 3 or 5 years, the rebel world may renew the dispute, the Japanese and Uchiha. Xingyan glanced at him. So, should Japan and Uchiha be offended? Masahiko finally understood why he was looking for him, but he really didn't care much, and when you set up a dark department, won't you choose a part of the family to join the family? During the day, he was slightly silent, and Xingyan suddenly woke up. The Japanese may have some ambitions for the position of Huaying. There is a chaos in your circle. Xingyan sighed, and regardless of the reaction, entered the conference room and began to mouth tear, the day, and Uchiha. It is good to be old and well-disciplined. Xingyan is more and more enjoying the feeling of relying on seniority to bully people. Before leaving the elders, others called Xingyan as the elder of Masahiko. After leaving office, it became Xingyan. Grandpa. In the face of a grandfather who was entangled in the hustle and bustle, the Japanese patriarch and Uchiha Izumi also had no way. After 10 minutes, I hated to leave the Huaying building. Masahiko scored a victory position in the daytime but was ignored. Second grandfather, trouble you go slowly. After saying this, I turned to the Nara patriarch and the big sister, and said, next we will discuss the candidates in the dark. Masahiko was forced to go out in the face and felt that he was used as the old rogue of Sappo. Forget it, don't care about you. Xingyan murmured, this wood leaf and my past memories are more and more like my police force, my school, now even the dark part must be established? After the incident, Masahiko did not participate, and the dark part was established in the middle of the month. The specific candidate is not known, but it seems that the family is biased towards the various minorities, and the big people are basically not selected. In addition, I actually found Jingjing in the daytime. Jingyan said that he was dying, but fortunately, Jingjing did not join, and he must not become Ming. After the dark members were selected, they were all sent out by the shackles, and even their own guards were not left. Jingyan did not see anyone. Now the endurance world is so nervous? Need so many people to investigate? Jingyan does not think that in 3 or 2 years, the world will endure war, and I feel that there may be another purpose. However, the news that came back one after another made Jingyan laugh and cry. Since the end of World War I, there must be a lot of spies around the leaves, because the other 4 large villages, and even some small villages, began to form their school and dark. If the Woodleaf School is not mine, it should be established. So, the decision-making ability of the day is recognized by so many people? Masahiko thought, and looked at it again and began to rely on his column to learn the scorpion, but sighed. You are a big brother, no wonder there will be no majesty. Episode 74, Ending the Name of the Valley. Wood leaves at the end of the 9 years. Since the end of the War of the Valley, Jingyan, who rarely walked out of the house, walked out of the wood leaves alone and came to a place more than 100 miles away from the wood leaves. Here is a wilderness, surrounded by broken walls. No one knows where it was before, but it will be called the end of the valley. The 2 guys, really? Jingyan sighed. Don't watch the fun of playing with the scorpion in the past year, but it was always a regret in his heart that he could not stop the battle of the end of the valley a year and a half ago. For this reason, Jingyan will practice carving in an uncharacteristic manner, in order to leave more detailed legends for future generations. Looking at the surrounding environment, it was a mess, and Jingyan frowned. It seems that I have to work as a cleaner first, and I remember that there should be a forest around, and Sasuke Naruto's first battle clearly, and grew up. The cleaning work was enough to spend a day in Jingyan, let him yell at himself in his heart, what to install. It is necessary to come alone, how good it is to bring a few errands. Call. Masahiko took a deep breath and sealed his hands. Turkish open soil and rock. Turkish open soil and rock. The bandits' land return. 3 ninjas have been used, and there are 3 huge rocks in the valley. The rocks on both sides are basically cuboids, which are used to engrave between columns and spots. The rock in the middle is slightly smaller, only the front is flat, which is used to write the inscription. Masahiko nodded happily, but looked at the darkness and sighed slightly. First take a break, this time is a long-lasting battle. Masahiko said that it was a protracted war, but still did not expect it to be so long-lasting. For the whole 3 months, Jingyan was the first to end the engraving between the columns and the spots. In the face of his masterpiece, Jingyan nodded with satisfaction. Very good, that's it. Jingyan murmured, the columns and spots he carved were more real than the original, and the skills of LV10 never let him down. If it is not the body shape and the color is wrong, it is said that no 2 people do not believe. But, the last step, how to finish? Jingyan fell into a difficult choice. The final steps of the 2 statues were not completed, and the gestures were not engraved. Is the seal of reconciliation? Jingyan sighed, but the battle between the pillars and the spots in the original did not stop. Battle status? Masahiko scratched his head and felt that it was not very suitable. You can't let them stand upright, haha. Jingyan teased himself. Well, is tangled, Jingyan feels that a familiar chakra is approaching quickly. Jingyan looked up and frowned. What are you doing here between the columns? He was conditioned, afraid that the column would like to play with the scorpion. 2 grandfathers, there was still a distance, and the column shouted. I will see how your statue is doing. Jingyan's face is black, and he sees himself a statue that will be seen by future generations. This skin is also no one in the column. I am afraid that he will not learn from him. However, when I was near, the column only swept my own statue, and I fixed my eyes on the spotted statue. It's coming again. Masahiko sighed and looked at the column and fell into inexplicable emotions. He interrupted quickly. Between the columns, you come just right, see how the 2 statues are carved? I stumbled between the columns, only to notice the incompleteness of the 2 statues. The seal of reconciliation, Grandpa. The column sighed and made this choice. Jingyan is not surprised. He also tends to use this gesture in his heart. Then I will start work. You can go back after reading it. Shaking his head between the columns, I have other things to do here. In the eyes of Jingyan's incomprehensible, the hands between the columns are printed, the hibiscus tree world is born. The lush forest grows around the end of the valley, trunks, branches, and even the leaves grow out. Xing Yan returned to God and was shocked. Between the columns, you are. Even in the past battles, such large areas of rafts were rarely used between columns, let alone let the leaves grow. Why do this? Your vitality. Shaking his head between the columns and smiling, I won't lose too much. From the arms, he took out a necklace that was familiar with Yen Yen. In the first few steps, the leaves in the lush forest withered instantly. On the other hand, the necklace in the hand between the columns, but the vitality of the flourishing. It has been 10 years since the wood leaves. Xing Yan muttered, probably guessing the purpose of doing this between the columns. Sure enough, the explanation between the columns did not surprise him. The incense is pregnant, this necklace is a gift for my grandson or granddaughter. The column slowly opened. I have just injected a lot of hibiscus chakras here, and it will live longer, and it can also play a role in suppressing the tail animal. Masahiko nodded and didn't know if he was happy or sad. The long-awaited director is about to be born, but the column is also coming to the end of life. Oh. Sighed, and Xing Yan continued his engraving career. The column did not leave, stay here to watch the Xing Yan carving. 2 days later, Masahiko ended the production of the 2 statues and stood in front of the reserved stone tablets. Between the columns, how do you say that I should praise you and the 2 people? Xing Yan smiled and opened his mouth. The column between the columns is exposed. It seems that the face between the columns is still not thick. I don't know what Xing Yan has to be proud of, just write it. Top 4 characters, the Valley of the End. The content is as follows: the 2 people who have settled the world in a chaotic manner, the road to the ninja has reached the ultimate endurance of the 2 gods, and the battle between the hands and the Uchiha is here. The payment is, tentative witness. To grandfather, why not sign? Xing Yan sighed. It is enough to have 2 of you. I am not very convenient to be told. Nod between the columns, Xing Yan, if it is passed down, probably the focus will be on the battlefield, Luo female. After the end of the valley, the 2 returned to Mai. It was calm along the way, but when it came close to the leaves, there was a point episode. The 2 masked ninjas carried a bag of things, and swiftly passed near the 2, and they nodded to them. I gently nodded back to the column and turned to ask Xing Yan, this is the dark part of the day? It looks good. Xing Yan was slightly frowning. He perceived that the 2 men were carrying a person and they were still living. Is the spy of the enemy village? After telling the column asked. Xing Yan hesitated a bit, and there was some speculation in his heart, but some did not dare to confirm. Go, we quietly keep up. Xing Yan whispered to the column and speeded up. The column was hesitated first, and immediately reacted and chased it up. As Xing Yan expected, the 2 people had some problems. They carried things, and did not return to the village. Instead, they ran along the outside of my village and went all the way to the northeast of my village. It won't be that. Xing Yan sighed, and some did not want to believe what he thought. Episode 75, Human Experiment. A bottomless hole. The 2 men between Xing Yan and Zhu followed the 2 dark parts and came to such a place. The light in the cave is dim, and only a few candle lights are used to illuminate. I don't know what is deep in the bottom of the hole, and the eyes of Masahiko are actually isolated. The 2 dark parts have already carried things and tied them down. At this time, the column has already felt something wrong. I talked with Xing Yan and I was ready to explore. Masahiko stopped the column. There is such a hidden place here. It may be a collection of dark parts or even a training place. We should not go in as well. Silence between the columns, nodded. On the way back to the village, Xing Yan took care of the column and ignored it. He quietly separated a shadow and wanted to sneak out the underground. As a result, a scene of jealousy took place, and the shadow of Masahiko was separated at the hole and encountered the wooden avatar between the columns. The 2 men looked at each other and Xing Yan sighed. Go, sighed in my heart. I hope it is not what I thought. The 2 stepped into the hole. After a few steps, there was a layer of stairs at the foot. As they went down, the candle on both sides of the road became denser and denser. A straight road went down 100 meters and turned to the right, a huge one. The portal appeared in front of 2 people. It's such a thing. Xing Yan muttered, in his perception, the entire underground was wrapped in similar materials like this door, so that he could not perceive the specific situation inside. The 2 looked at each other and prepared to open the door to see the result, but the door opened itself. Out of the 2 people from the inside, it was the members of the dark department who carried the things before, and the 4 people looked at each other and the atmosphere was picked up. Yesuwa, savage, staying at the door to do what? Inside the gate, a familiar voice came out. The 2 men in the dark did not answer, and the people in the door slowly walked out and saw Xingyan and the column, which was obviously stunned. The atmosphere was awkward for a while, and for a while, Xingyan waved his hand. It's a coincidence, meet here. The person who walked out was the shadow of the tens of thousands of hands. If it wasn't for the wrong environment, it's really inexplicable to meet the avatars of Xingyan, Zhu, and Yu. Second grandfather paused for a while, and his look was tight. Big brother. This is the training place for the dark part of our wood leaves. How did you come here? After saying this, turn to the two dark parts. You two, go back first. When the dark part left, the column sighed. In the meantime, you are not good at lying. And the second grandfather is a perceptive ninja. There is no secret when the door is opened. Second grandfather, what is inside? Masahiko was silent and shook his head. Let's go see it yourself. The look of the day changed, but it was not good to block the column, and the column quickly walked into the door. Xingyan sighed and looked at the day. How are you going to explain to your older brother? Although I haven't entered yet, this kind of location, this kind of confidentiality, is reminiscent of the living person who has just been carried in by the two dark parts. How can I think of where this place is? I thought that the big snake pill that was about to be born was the biggest scientist in the world of Huaying. I didn't expect to have been involved in human experiments before him. The face was low, and I didn't answer the question of Xingyan. I turned and chased it in. Masahiko shook his head and walked in slowly. What caught the eye was the bodies of various animals, which were sealed by ice. Wait, these are all psychic beasts? Where did you find them? Is his experimental content just a psychic beast? Xingyan murmured, thinking of the living being carried by the dark, shaking his head and moving on. Go with. When I came to the next room, Masahiko looked around and took a look. Various human bodies and organs are sealed by crystal columns, which is like a biological laboratory. The object of the experiment is human. However, Masahiko looked carefully and gave a slight sigh of relief. The face here was not found in the village of Jupiter, and there was no experiment with the people in his village like the big snake. Continue to walk deep into the room, and several steps leading to the deeper underground appear in front of Masahiko. In the underground, there was a scream of quarrel between the columns and the shackles. Xingyan walked quickly to the bottom, and the quarrel gradually became clear. Big brother. I am doing this for the village. As long as we study this ninjutsu success, we will not be disadvantaged in the next war. Stop this experiment. Oh. Big brother. The experimental materials are the detective ninja of the outer village, just to make the best use of it. Experimental materials? These are all living humans. Xingyan walked in, and the two men looked at him at the same time, let him give a slight glimpse, and did not know what to say, only a slight sigh. You continue to argue, I just listen. Between the columns, I was about to open my mouth. I didn't want to change my big brother's thoughts. Big brother, my grandfather, my ninjutsu has already had some results. I will show it to you. In the meantime, I walked in. After a while, I dragged out a person. The frown between the columns looked at the day, but the day was not to be outdone. Big brother, this is the newly captured scorpion, who is exploring the guards around our leaves. A sigh between the columns, no longer snoring. In the meantime, I took out a seal scroll from my arms. After unsealing the seal, a small piece of blood appeared in front of the three. After the day, the hands are printed, Insi Suchin. After the hands clasp together, the earth is reborn. A coffin rises from the ground and loads the stunned village ninja. In a short while, the coffin opens again, revealing strange faces that give the column a slight glimpse. It's not an accident that Masahiko is. It's really a reincarnation. Is this a big change in the world of Naruto? The ninja in the hall slowly opened his eyes and then did not move. Later, he explained, people who come out of the spirit have half the strength of his life. I am trying to make him have some ingenuity. If it succeeds, even if we are besieged by other 4 countries after the war. Psychic? Desperate? Before the life? 3 questions were continuously issued between the columns, and the brows became wrinkled and tight. For a while, the column was furious. In the daytime, you don't just experiment with living people, but also play with the soul of the dead. This study of ninjutsu must stop immediately. The face is unclear, big brother, this is for the wooden leaves. Halfway through it, it was forced back by the eyes between the columns. The hibiscus, the tree world is born. No more words between the columns, choose to directly destroy this research. However, Xingyan's face is green and will be buried alive. Not only him, but also between the columns and the rafts, the three are all separate. At the entrance of my CUN, Xingyan and the column are about to enter the door, and the information sent back from the body makes their face change slightly. Masahiko frowned slightly. The development of the earth-boiled reincarnation was still not involved, and the witness points could not be obtained. He sighed again. However, I didn't expect this kind of development, or don't participate. Episode 76, Zero Hand. Inside the Huiying building. Xingyan listened with interest to the first generation of Huiying to ideological education on the second generation of Huiying, secretly ridiculed the helplessness of the day and did not dare to resist. Ideological education lasted for half an hour before finally stopping. The expression of the day was initially a faceless look, and later turned into a helpless face, and finally became love. Let Masahiko almost laughed out. More and more serious second-generation Naruto, only in the side of the column will reveal such expression. When I saw the column between the columns, I dared not to accept it. With a glimpse of my eyes, a new round of ideological education was already brewing. Xingyan was helpless and interrupted. He said with a smile, "You will say that you are studying this ninjutsu to resurrect your big brother in a few years." The face was tight and there was no rebuttal. Xingyan's mouth twitched and he muttered, "It's really like this." Looked around the column, sighed, "Don't, the next is not an example. This ninjutsu is temporarily sealed as a ban." The storm of reincarnation was temporarily suspended. Xingyan knew how big the ninjutsu would stir in the future. He could have destroyed the ninjutsu like a corpse, but he could not start. When I wait a few decades, I should be able to use the resurrection ninjutsu. As for the price, let it be the first thing. Xingyan's mind is so intended, he is always unwilling to change the end of the valley. Therefore, the technique of reincarnation is as original, and it is classified as a ban and saved. After Masahiko had a new mission, he was commissioned by the column to monitor the day. Of course, it is not face-to-face surveillance, and Masahiko did not have the mood to stay in the Huiying office all day. He just stayed in a nearby location, and occasionally monitored it with a sacred eye to see if there was any difference between the days. As for where is Masahiko? "To grandfather, are you coming to my house to drink tea?" Xianji sighed and sat down opposite Xingyan. Xingyan smiled and watched as Xiang came over with 2 cups of tea and smiled. The tea of the Princess of Fire is not a chance to drink. After a pause, Masahiko continued, "But the Constitution, the fragrant is pregnant after all, and will not bother her next time." The Constitution was just a sigh of relief, and his expression was stiff on his face. "Next time, I want to drink your tea." "To grandfather, it doesn't matter." Xiang approached, the Princess of Fire Country, a look of everyone, the girl who was contacted by Xingyan, also had a ratio of the current Mido. "I only have 3 months, it doesn't matter." Xiang continued. Xingyan nodded, and sighed again, muttering to himself, "It's only 3 months, it seems that I have to stay here for more than half a year." Next to the Constitution, the eyes widened. "To grandfather, you." Xingyan did not pay attention to it. He made up his mind to rely on the constitutional family for the first half of the year. One is to avoid the gambler between the columns, and the other is to monitor the birth of the whole master. As for monitoring the day, it is only incidental. "To grandfather." The scream of the Constitution called Xingyan back to God. Without waiting for him to speak, the Constitution went on to say, "It is too late, are you going back first?" This is a bit of a Nash. Masahiko looked out of the window, and sure enough, the sky was dark. He nodded. "Then I will go back first, come back tomorrow." The Constitution hastened to add, "Grandpa, I have something to go to my school tomorrow, you." Masahiko waved his hand, "Nothing, it's good to be at home." When Xingyan went far, the Constitution looked helplessly and looked at the bitter aroma, shaking his head with a smile. For this grandfather, he really has no way. Xingyan walked on the way home, muttering in his mouth. "I haven't done anything for half a month. Did you find out my surveillance, or did you really give up?" After thinking about it, he laughed again. "Second, when I was a child, the bear child could not bully to grandfather. Now that I am growing up, I should retaliate. When I was pregnant with you, I seemed to be such a routine to bully the column. I was inexplicably nostalgic." In the next 5 months, Xingyan became a former office worker. He went to the 9th and 6th every day and went to the constitutional home every day. However, in September, the Mido lived in the constitutional home, and Xingyan was somewhat embarrassed to go. In the face of the Mido who had some guesses about his age, he always had some guilty conscience. As for the reason why the Mido lived in, it was because of the slight surprise of Xingyan, actually in order to prepare to send Xiang to the hospital at any time, personally deliver the baby. Remember that in the original book, he gave birth to his wife, Cinny, his wife. Is the midwife in Huiying so unprofessional? Xing Yan smiled and shook his head. Is a good physique, and there is a relationship between 9 people. But the aroma is not a ninja. Is this really okay? It is clear that the master is born smoothly, but at this time, he is more worried than the constitution. In the mood of Xing Yan's nervousness and anticipation, time came to the Woodleys at noon on August 2nd. In the corridor of the Konoha hospital, 4 people were anxiously staying here: Masahiko, Column and Constitution. Listening to the scent from time to time in the room, and the orderly voice of the Mido, Masahiko always has a sense of disharmony. Co-owned households have also specially practiced delivery technology? Even the medical ninja has to be her commander. This old woman is really, very powerful. Xing Yan looked at the Constitution and asked, is there a good name for the child? He intended to grab a wave of naming rights, and the answer to the constitutional order made him look black. Thinking. If it is a girl, it is called a hand. If it is a boy, it is called a rope tree. Well, even the next wave of naming rights can't be won. Masahiko still regrets not having to start a name for the early stage, and the shouts in the room gradually subsided. After 2 slaps, the cries of the baby came out. Just. Xiao Jiang's hand was spanked. Xing Yan felt inexplicably happy. After a while, the Mido came out with a baby wrapped tightly with a quilt and looked at the 4 people. It's a girl, he said. Actually, he opened the quilt slightly to give the 4 people a look. When the Constitution stared at the baby for a while, it reacted and quickly entered the room to see the situation of Hashang. The column between the columns was filled with joy and smile, and the baby around the waters of the Mido was turned around. Xing Yan looked at a few eyes, but sighed slightly, shook his head, and went out, leaving 2 faces with a look of sorrow. Walking aimlessly on the streets of Konoha, Masahiko fell into an inexplicable mood. I saw the Luo body of the outline, but the heart is not fluctuating. Xing Yan muttered. I look forward to it for so long, just waiting for a baby, how long it will take to see the 3-bearing style and other plot characters. Xing Yan feels a little tired of waiting. It's really uncomfortable to wait forever. Do you want to find something to do? Xing Yan sighed and felt a little sad. When you leave the column. Episode 77, Weekend Banquet. Since the birth of the hand, Masahiko has been wandering around the streets of my village, mixing into the ranks of grocery-buying ants and inquire about which newborns were born. In his memory, the big snake pill and the self seems to be smaller than the hand, but they were born in the same year. The big snake pill was easily found by Masahiko. Unexpectedly, the parents of Dashimaru were the first-time civilian ninjas of the ninja school. When they were young, Masahiko had seen them, but they did not expect them to be the parents of Dashinwan. The Wooden Leaf School that was established in advance, let the parents of Dash and Pill become their classmates in the future. I don't know what will happen. Xing Yan muttered that he always felt that he had established a Wooden Leaf School in advance. Event. Masahiko did not alarm them, and looked away from the baby snake version of the big snake pill, and continued to embark on a journey to find the self. In fact, there is no way to disturb the parents of the big snake pill. I can't say. I'll take a look at the future great scientist, Uncle Snake. This will be treated as mentally ill. He didn't know that the couple who had suffered from the temperament class in the life of the school had long regarded him as a mental illness. The journey to find a baby is very unsatisfactory. Until the 11th mid-year tour of Konoha, Ihimiko did not hear that there is a child called a native. My immortal, I won't let me go. Xing Yan sighed. Remember that you are also an orphan. Is it an alien orphan? Finally, Masahiko can only find this explanation. Is it true that I should build an orphanage? However, a few days later, Masahiko left this idea behind. He got the news that the Chancho family would hold a banquet for the first time. There are such things in the ninja world? Masahiko had a black line and had never heard of it. Later, I asked about it. The banquet is usually held by the big aristocrats of the country of fire. As for the role, is to collect money. Isn't Shanha the biggest aristocrat in the country of fire? It is not surprising to say this. But the column and the day also agreed to hold this banquet. Isn't this a gift to other ninjas? The singer of Kanosha also learned to be corrupt. Masahiko was so sad. It's not too much trouble for Masahiko to give the gift to the syllabus, just take this opportunity to send the necklace should be sent between the columns, during the day. What will be sent during the day, Xing Yan still can't guess. Sure enough, on the day of August 2nd, the Changong's hand-to-year banquet, the major kungs were sent to send their gifts. But... Monkey, what do you mean by sending a stick? Do you want my family to become a monkey? The column between the columns tightly stretched the neck of his apprentice, and slammed open. The sundial can only make a bitter smile. Xing Yan's mouth twitched, but in the distance, there was a cries of the hand. Walking a few steps, Masahiko reluctantly grabbed his forehead. Well girl, are you really sending a special bug? However, it is no different when I was a child, and I was afraid of bugs. Xing Yan glanced around and saw a helpless and fragrant aroma, almost laughed. Weekly banquet. Masahiko shook his head. Hexiang, you have to turn the 1,000 hands into weapons. What gifts can the ninjas send? It is impossible to send some gold and silver jewelry to the nobles of the country of fire. So, looking at a pile of all kinds of weapons on the table, suffering, swords, and even a box of detonation, was hurriedly collected by the Constitution. A nice gift is the special peasant grain pill of the Autumn Road family, and a pair of beautiful antlers in the Nara family. My gift is really the best. Masahiko nodded proudly and handed the reel to Hexiang. Hexiang looked at it casually and put it on the table, so that Xing Yan's face was black. The mistake is made. Hexiang is not a ninja, he does not know the goods. It should be given to the Constitution. On the other side, the column has already let go of the flying sun, to comfort the crying hand. However, the props he used to comfort the hand made Xing Yan's face darker. Isn't that the time between the columns? The director actually stopped crying, and took both hands and shook it twice, revealing a smile, and let Xing Yan shook his head. Natural gamblers. Thank you grandfather. The crisp boy voice came, and Xing Yan was slightly lost. Yes, the 1-year-old hand should be called, how can I forget this? Masahiko quickly stepped forward and wanted to hear him call him a grandfather. He squeezed the column and said, Xiaojiang, do you know what should be called me? Xiaojiang's hand was silent, whispered, the ancestors. What the hell? Xing Yan muttered, correcting, it should be a grandfather. To grandfather, should she call you a grandfather? Grandpa's grandfather, I really don't know what to call her. I can only call you an ancestor. On the side, the Constitution does not know when it came to the side. Xing Yan just wanted to laugh at him and he didn't learn nothing, but he was slightly silent. In the chaotic warring states, there have never been 5 generations of the same family. The column clearly thought of these, but it showed a smile. A gang, remember later, Grandpa's grandfather will call Gao grandfather, this name will be more and more. Xiaojiang knows nodding, but Yan Yan is upset. If there is a 6th generation in the future, what should I call me? Is it really necessary to call my ancestors? Xing Yan did not really understand this, even if he was a past life, there was basically no way to have a 6-day family. What is Naruto supposed to call me? Xing Yan is still thinking, and someone pushes him gently. It turns out that it is finally here. Hey, Huang adults are really busy, the second grandfather, who is the master of the hand finally arrives, gift? Xing Yan smiled and spoke. I couldn't help but sigh, and I didn't explain it. I made a special stroke in my hand. Masahiko nodded slightly, this gift is not bad. Just want to say something, on the other side, the column has already announced that the banquet has begun. Every family came in, and Yan Yan shook his head and said nothing, or eating. The sumptuous dishes were placed on the table, which was almost comparable to the one that Xing Yan had eaten in the Daming mansion. For the banquet of the master's birthday, thousands of hands were considered a big capital. This time, Masahiko did not immediately eat, but smiled and looked at the table where the gifts were placed. The sword in his hand did not pile up a thick layer. The sporadic and special gifts were not too expensive. The ninjas really don't give gifts. Feeling. Without my psychic scroll, the 1,000 hands are losing money this time. I really is a generous person. Masahiko nodded and opened it. Episode 78, with laughter. Time flies, time is like an arrow, time is like a shuttle, like a water year, and so on. In short, the time has passed since the beginning of the year, and the time has passed unconsciously for more than a year. There is not much change in the life of Masahiko, or it is gambling on the gambling. The only difference is that there is a small gambler. Since Xiaojiang's hand touched the cockroach at the banquet, he was out of control. The column is also petting her. She is taking her to Xing Yan's house, to gamble all day, or is it to find someone who is worse than his gambling? Masahiko had been avoiding them and let them go to the casino themselves. But a month ago, he took the initiative to find the column and played with them, because he felt that the vitality between the columns did not know why, and suddenly it passed a lot. It is estimated that the limit will come. I don't know what the Constitution and the fragrant incense think. Xing Yan murmured, looking helplessly at the column hand-to-hand gamble. No wonder the gambling skill is so bad, can you still learn with the column? Xing Yan sighed and shook his head. Although the column is called the ninja, there is really no talent in gambling. Xing Yan taught him for so long, and there is no improvement. However, Masahiko really did not intend to come to teach the master in person. Even if he is strong, he will not be able to compare with the shore. If the hand wins the money, the setting of the accident will make Xing Yan very upset. "A gang, my grandfather shakes you at 18 o'clock. The loud voice between the columns came, and Xing Yan returned to God and showed helplessness. "Open, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, a total of 8 points. Ah, haha, a gang, I just said 8 o'clock. The laughter and explanation between the columns came. "Great, grandfather. Xiaojing really believes that his hands have been smashed, his face is excited, his eyes are shining, and after shaking, he squats on the table. The hands trembled open, 6, 6, 6, and 18 points in front of the 3. The smile between the columns was a stiff, and after a while, he was excited and turned to Xing Yan. "It seems that a gang is very talented in gambling. Second grandfather, I can't win you. After that, a gang can." Xing Yan snorted, "I want to be beautiful, between the columns, I think about what time it is, and I bet that Xiaojing is worse than you." After taking over, Xing Yan casually swayed and placed it on the table, not to see. The column opened up, and the face was puzzled. 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock. 2 grandfathers, do you want to shake 17? Grandpa, I won." The excitement of the master hand was passed to Xing Yan's ear, and Xing Yan's eyes widened. "Look at you, then look at the excitement of the hand," Xing Yan slightly silent. I want to shake out 18 points. The level 10 skills can't go wrong," Xing Yan sighed, his eyes reddish, looking at the column. "So, probably." There was doubt in the column. "What happened, Grandpa?" "Nothing, you continue." Masahiko responded with a silence. Along the column and the hand continued to play, but uncharacteristically, the gambling was even worse, and the winning column was black. "Xing Yan is getting lower and lower, Xiaogang has always won, I am afraid." However, after a while, the constitutional order actually came over. Masahiko thought that he also had a bad feeling, and did not expect that the constitution was actually a crying and smiling expression. In the first sentence, "Let everyone be there. Father, mother, seems to be pregnant." Masahiko's face was pumping, and his mouth murmured. "The Mido, this year is 47 years old. You can do it in the column. No wonder the vitality suddenly passed away so many months ago." The column was slightly silent, and after a moment, a smile was revealed, and Xiaojing's hand was held in his arms. "Is the Mido pregnant? It's really hard for her. I'm a grandfather, peace, I'm afraid I can't see it, you, and the constitution. A gang, let me see the day when peace comes," he said, lying slowly in the chair. "Grandfather, why can't you see the day of peace?" The little hand in the arms of the column looked back and wondered. "Father, you." The constitution had to talk again. Xing Yan patted him on the shoulder, shook his head and went out. "Let me come to see peace for you? It seems, my transformation can only be awkward to those unfamiliar people. They are estimated to have been discovered before the column. However, peace, you will see the day with your own eyes." Masahiko sighed and walked to the Huiying building, which had not been visited for more than a year. I walked into the Huiying office, and I was still changing the documents in the same day. When I saw the arrival of Masahiko, I looked up and saw the expression of Xing Yan, a slight glimpse. Silence for a moment, then bowed his head and then handled the official duties. Masahiko did not bother, and looked for a chair to sit down, and looked at it. After half an hour, I finished the review of all the documents and finally looked up again and looked at Xing Yan. "2 grandfathers, I really don't want to see you at this time." "Easy," shouted Xing Yan's familiar dark part appeared in front of him. "Commanded to prepare for the funeral of the first generation of Naruto." The dark part glimpsed, "Yes, Huiying da." When the dark part left, Xing Yan sighed. Let's go, and look at the column." The two returned to the whirlpool station, where a group of people had been surrounded. The constitutional and the fragrant scent pulled a still small little hand, the thousand-handed elders who were already retiring, and the newly born otters. Many people have been rushed over, especially the group of elders and patriarchs who have retired in the 6 years of Mai. Some of them have already needed others to walk, but they still insisted on coming here. As the older generation who spent most of their lives in the warring states, they are the most admired people in the column. I have been obsessed with the age of more than 60 years, and I have nostalgic color, muttering to myself, "You have a great son in Buddhism." The 4 strong men of that year only left him still in the world, he is a winner. But compared to the offspring, the difference is far. Noting the arrival of Masahiko and Shibuya, these people took the initiative to let a road open and let them go to the forefront. Jing Yan looked at the closed eyes, and there was a smile between the pillars in the corner of his mouth. He looked at the sorrowful peasant and shook his head. For the second child, you are also fighting, between the columns. So, see you 50 years later. After an hour, the villagers of the entire my village all got the news. At the end of the 12th year of the Wooden Leaves, the great of the ninja, the terminator of the warring states, and the first generation of the Shadow of the Hand, with a smile, died at the age of 49. Episode 79, The World is So Big, I Want to See It. Wood Leaves 12 years, December 30th. The next day is the New Year's Day, but the entire Wood Leaves are shrouded in a sad atmosphere, and even the sky is gloomy. Because of this day, my village held a funeral between the first generation of Naruto. The arrangement of the funeral was not complicated. On the open space of the Wooden Leaf Cemetery, a row of tables was placed, some white flowers were placed on the table, and a few white cloths were placed. A black and white photo of the column was hung behind the desk, which seemed to be a bit quiet. In a black dress, Jing Yan stood between the villagers and the ninjas who came to mourn. There were no 4 elders like Mito or Mike standing in the front row. In front of the room, I personally presided over the funeral between the columns, and I was reading the introduction of the life between the columns. Next to it, there was a burst of sobbing, and Jing Yan took a closer look. It was actually 2 girls who could protect the Wood Leaves for several years, between the constitutional weddings. At the time, the content of the discussion was also vividly sighed. Let you be disappointed, the column still didn't live with me. The surrounding crowd began to surge, and Jing Yan doubted and returned to God. He found that the speech in the front was over, and the crowd lined up and moved forward little by little to give a white flower to the column. Masahiko shook his head and walked to the side of the room. Don't you cry secretly? Silence for a moment, shaking his head. Jing Yan sighed. Your big brother is right, you are not good at lying. After saying this, Jing Yan also took a white flower and walked to the black and white photo between the columns. I scratched my head. How can I not find out where the world sells cameras? If it is better to have a video camera, I really want to show it to you, my funeral, I must be very happy. The one who was on the side of the flower was Jing Jing. Looking at Jing Yan, the eyes were red. Teacher, are you, leave us too? Jing Yan reacted all of a sudden, his face was black. I don't mean to take it to him. I thought about it and explained it. I turned around and left. After 2 steps, I turned and looked at Jing Jing. After today, I will go out for a while, and I will transfer this ninja world and tell Nanako and Yitzi not to think about me. After saying this, he found that Jing Yan's eyes were redder and he was about to explode. Jing Yan sighed and never dared to stay. Going back, I found a familiar group of 6 people in the queue. 6 disciples between the columns and the day. These 6 people are already 21 years old, the future is their time. Jing Yan murmured. Remember that in the original book, after the endurance test, there is such a funeral in the Japanese sun. But now, I am afraid you should not have this opportunity. I don't know if you are happy or regret it. When I came to the Mito and looked at the sad Mito, I did not know how to comfort myself. The face of the girl who has not changed for 30 years, brought the thoughts of Masahiko back to the water-smelling family and married to the Thousand Hands, the shy boy, the head of the watermelon that came out from behind the tribe. The past was like a movie. Second grandfather, let's go. The voice of the day interrupted Jing Yan's thoughts. He discovered that his memory had gone through more than 1 hour. The funeral was over and the crowd had dispersed. Older, memories are more. Looking around, only the day and the Mito stayed at the scene. As for the husband and wife, they have already gone back with the crying tired Xiaojiang. Jing Yan was silent for a while and slowly shook his head. I will not go back. During the day and the waters, Su Yan continued to explain, I can be 81 years old tomorrow. I have lived for so many years. I have only been to the country of the wind for half a month. I feel that I have failed too much. I am going to hide my name and go to other countries to see the whole picture of the ninja world. Before the opening of the day, the Mito took the initiative to answer the words. To grandfather, then you go early and go back. I hope to see you in my lifetime. Jing Yan's eyes widened. There are years of life? Mito, do you think that grandpa is willing to leave so long? Do not worry, now the world is not calm, I went out to investigate the information, if there is any wind and grass, I will come back in time. Silence for a moment, I said, that too grandfather, you have to be careful. Masahiko shook his head. There are no pillars and spots. No one can threaten me. What needs to be worried about other countries now? And do you think I will suffer from my grandfather? When they mentioned the column, the two did not speak. Jing Yan quickly opened the subject. I have a fame in the world. I hope that when I can meet you, I hope that you will recognize me when you arrive. Saying, look at the day, I might suddenly take a day. Another identity appears in front of you, scaring you to jump. I nodded and felt puzzled. In fact, I always wanted to ask what your age is. If you are not convenient, don't say it. Masahiko was silent and was trying to find a reason to fool the past. The Mito was the first to speak. He said to the singer, the second grandfather can live for 500 years for some reason. As for the specific reasons, I am not sure. Masahiko is puzzled. 500 years? When did I tell you that I can live for 500 years? Mito also showed a surprised look. Would you not sing this way? I sang? Xingyan was puzzled first, then thought about it. On the way to the water hand to go to the 1,000 hands, he sang an adapted version of Going to the Sky for another 500 years. So, did the Mito think so in the past few years? Xingyan scratched his head and murmured. Haha, Xingyan smiled and said, yes, but it's not necessarily 500 years, maybe 400 years, maybe 300 years, maybe tomorrow? The two obviously do not believe. Well, I can live for 500 years, and you should be a special skill for me. This is better than eternal life. Xingyan sighs and talks to himself. How did I borrow 2 more? For 100 years, it is still close to normal people. Xingyan sighed and waved his hand and returned to the whirlpool station. He simply packed up his luggage. In fact, it was a little money and several important seal reels. He did not say goodbye to more people and went straight out of the wood. Away from the wood leaves, Shihiko took a deep breath and shouted, the world is so big, I want to see it. Hey, the world of Huaing doesn't seem to be big. I don't think it will take long to fly a circle. A drop of water drops on the face of Masahiko. Masahiko looked up, it rained. Look at the wool, or find a place to hide from the rain. My trip was a bit uncomfortable at the beginning. Episode 80, Tangjigua. I didn't expect this kind of place. Xingyan was lying in the hot spring, feeling a sigh. After leaving the village of Mai, Xingyan went all the way north and came to a country called Tangjigua. Naturally, in order to facilitate walking in the endurance world, Masahiko made some disguise with the transformation. His current appearance is a dark-skinned young man in his 20s. He looks like a normal person. Except for a little blonde hair and a mismatched appearance, no one else is concerned about walking in the crowd. This country of soup is a paradise. Masahiko changed his position in the hot spring and narrowed his eyes comfortably. It has been nearly half a month since the death of the column. Almost all of the world has received news, and the smell of smoke is everywhere. However, one day ago, Xingyan came to this country called Tangjigua, but found that the residents here are not at all nervous, and there are many traders and tourists, which is completely a paradise. And as the name of the country, this country is full of soup, that is, hot springs. Masahiko has been soaking for a long time, feeling that he is quickly and comfortably lost. So, next, how should I get into the country of Lei? Xingyan changed his position and muttered to himself. Yes, the ultimate goal of Xingyan's trip is the country of Lei. It turned out to be a dark-skinned youth for this purpose, because he was impressed that most people in the country of Lei are the skin color, which is more harmonious. As for the golden hair, it is related to one of the purposes of his going to the country of Lei. He wants to steal the secret rumor of the Thunder Kingdom, the Thunder Chakra pattern and the matching body skills, which will give him a feeling of becoming a Super Saiyan. Masahiko's body skills have always been relatively weak, even if he learned the 8 armor. Because the 8-door armor has no matching body skills, like the Table Lotus and Lilian Hua, he can naturally use it, but it is not useful. He has been developing peacocks and scorpions for a long time, but he has not made any progress. His talent in physical surgery is really general. He always waits for his old face to be red. This time I hope to learn the Thunder Chakra pattern. It is also hoped that it will be able to bypass the class and make progress in physical education. I don't know how many stages of the Thunder Chakra pattern. If there are 4 stages, this color is not suitable for me. Xingyan muttered to himself, but it is actually more important for the Super Saiyan. The final destination is set in the country of Lei, and of course there are other purposes. In the first battle of the end of the world to be opened, 2 major events occurred in the memory of Masahiko. First, in the war between Yenin village and Wuyin village, the second generation of Taiying and the second generation of the water shadow ghosts and the moon are all gone. The second is the alliance ceremony between my village and Yenin village. After the coup, he killed the second generation of Lei Ying, and then pursued the 6 disciples between him and his 6 disciples. Therefore, the ultimate goal of this time is to save the world from the roots. He hopes to mix into Yunin village, or even a special unit mixed with the golden horn and silver horn. There was no rescue between the columns. It was black and it was a ghost. If you are still dead, I will pass through a white call. Masahiko took a deep breath and walked out of the hot springs. Get dressed, take the parcel, and measure it. There is a flaw in the bag, which is the seal of the nine-tailed property chakra. If there is an opportunity, this time you can also complete the missing part of the nine-tailed chakra. Xing Yan discovered a few days ago, and the yang property in the chakra is somewhat defective. Think about it, the broken part should be on the golden corner and the silver horn. How do you feel that you are so troublesome to go out? So, the first step, think of a way, mixed into Yunin village. Now the world of tolerance is no more than a few years ago. The 5 major countries are nervously guarding the war that is about to break out, but it is not free to enter. Izumi can certainly find a way to sneak in, but after that it is not very good. After thinking for a long time, I didn't find a suitable way. Go out and go around. Guest officer, go slowly. In the hospitality of the buddy, Xing Yan left the hot spring. Walking aimlessly on the streets of Tangziguo, wandering for a long time, Xing Yan did not have much to gain. In addition to hot springs, it is a hotel and a hotel. It's a tourist country, ah? Xing Yan suddenly found a different building in the distance. Take a closer look, guarding recruitment? Xing Yan scratched his head and walked in. There are a few tables in the simple display. There is a fierce middle-aged man sitting behind the desk. Holding a long knife in his arms, a long knife almost spans the entire face. Where is the application? The warrior is still a ninja? I'm looking around, seeing no third person, opening the door. What is it here? Knife licking his face, outsiders? Later, I explained the origin of the so-called Guardian Recruitment Office to Masahiko. It turns out that there are many traders in Tangziguo, and there are many goods to be shipped to Liziguo, and between Tangziguo and Liziguo, it is necessary to pass through a country that is in chaos throughout the year, the country of Sichuan. Therefore, merchants only recruit escorts to protect themselves. In the past, most of the merchants were entrusted to the My Village Ninja Escort, but in recent years, because of the turmoil in the world, My refused the mission to the country of Lei, so the Guardian Recruitment Office was established. After listening to the explanation, Xing Yan's heart was dark and he felt that he had found a way to enter the country of Lei. As for the things that followed, he mixed in and considered. Is there any assessment for joining the ranks of guards? Xing Yan asked. I need to record your information, Knife squinted. You should be a ninja, history and name? Xing Yan hesitated, my name is Xing Yan. Hey, my name is Xing Yanni, the Iron Country is a wandering warrior. At this time, because the Iron Country is still in the civil war, there are many warriors in the Iron Country. The knife squinted and sat up straight, muttering, Yang Yanni? What a ghost name. Masahiko is secretly pouting, not Chinese, no culture. And, Knife's face opened again, irony and warrior, what level? Xing Yan's eyes turned. What do you think? He really didn't know the samurai rank. The face of the knife is red. You are playing me? Look at your appearance, that is, a lower-level warrior. Masahiko shook his head. I am a superior warrior. The opposite knife has already pulled out the knife. Sure enough, I am playing, the superior warrior. Without the samurai sword? Masahiko's face was red. Ah, sorry, it seems to be in the hot springs, I'm going to take it. The slamming sound disappeared. There was only a slap in the face, and muttered to himself, is it so fast, is it a superior warrior? Previous. D2 Episode 29, The World is So Big, I Want to See It, T next. D3 Episode 2, Caravan.